American Top 40.
Well, now on American Top 40, the story of that rock band singer who says the most important thing you've got to watch while touring is your diet. He says you have to avoid eating good food at all costs. That's what lead singer David Lee Roth of the rock group Van Halen told writer Terry Atkinson. His tongue had to be in his cheek when he said, if you get your mind and body adapted to healthy stuff, you're really going to fall to pieces out there because it's totally unavailable. So what I do is eat a lot of greasy burgers and other garbage food and wash it all down with anything that's got a lot of sugar in it. It seems that Roth once tried to eat good food, and the results were just disastrous. Somebody took me to a nice health food restaurant in San Francisco, he says. I had one of those big nutritious salads and passed out halfway through. It took 3 chili dogs and a Snickers bar to revive me. End of quote. And why do I get the feeling David Lee Roth is pulling our leg? But there's no leg pulling with the band's music. It's real healthy rock and roll. This week, Van Halen is on the way down, pausing at number 36 with Dance the Night Away. Got as high as number 15. That was last week. That's Van Halen on American Top 40, 9th week on the chart, now at number 36 with Dance the Night Away.
American Top 40.
AT40 originates in Hollywood. Now on American Top 40, we're up to the song by America's hottest heavy metal band. The band whose lead singer is one of the wildest rock performers in the business. That's on stage. Off stage, a different story. You might say he's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of rock. He's the colorful frontman of the band Van Halen, David Lee Roth. Dave says his interest in music began when he was a kid. His family was living in New York at the time, and it was the early 1960s, and the folk music revival was in full swing. David says his Uncle Manny ran a coffee house in the heart of the folk scene, Greenwich Village, a place called Cafe Wah. Young David Lee Roth would spend hours sitting on the wooden benches listening to all the folk singers who passed through the club. At home, he started playing folk music on guitar, and he also discovered his parents' record collection, especially the Al Jolson and Broadway musical soundtrack records. Well, the years passed, and by the time high school rolled around, Dave's family had moved to Pasadena, California. And it was in school that Dave met 2 brothers who were very into rock and roll, Edward and Alex Van Halen. And it wasn't too long before Dave was rocking too, but he couldn't abandon the music he loved before. To this day, after months on the road on tour as the frontman with Van Halen, David Lee Roth likes to come home and slap on some Al Jolson or a Broadway soundtrack. And the singer says, I still play folk music on guitar. I cannot play rock and roll. I have no desire to. End of quote. Well, Dave may not play it, but he sure sings it. And his band's current hit is at number 13 this week. Here's David Lee Roth and Van Halen with I'll Wait. The 4-man band Van Halen that's been together since 1974. I'll Wait is their hit, and it's at number 13 again this week. Every week, American Top 40 is heard in the 50 states and around the world on great radio stations like WFTQ, Worcester, Massachusetts, KPRE, Cedar City, Utah, and KIFW, Sitka, Alaska.
American Top 40.
This is American Top 40's special countdown of the biggest hits so far in the 1980s. In this decade, a popular heavy metal band from L.A. who started back in the 1970s finally hit the big time. A band featuring an innovative guitar genius and a fast-talking, wild and woolly front man. And their number 1 song was so popular, a few other acts recorded versions of it for albums.
You assume, well, this is rock and roll, it's disposable, you know, it's not biodegradable, you're going to have to leave it behind and whatever, and somebody comes with a rendition of Jump that sounds more like Willie Nelson. Wow, maybe there is a future for this stuff. I have no idea. I do know we're getting to be a little bit better songwriters. We're starting to write a little bit better melodies, a little bit, and that's what kind of puts something up there for a while to begin with. You've got to have that melody. You've got to be able to sing the song, hum it along with the radio, and feel like it's your own, like you're the singer.
We're going to do that right now. That was Diamond David Lee Roth. Today he's gone solo from the band Van Halen, but back in 1984 they hit number 1 together. That song's the 22nd most popular song of the 80s. Come on, everybody, jump!
Get ready and jump!
#1 for 5 consecutive weeks back in 1984. Van Halen jumping in at number 22 on American Top 40 as we continue to count down the 80s biggest hits.
Casey's Coast to Coast.
At number 25 this week, we're up to David Lee Roth's hit medley of two old pop standards, Just a Gigolo and I Ain't Got Nobody. Now, the older of those two songs, I Ain't Got Nobody, was written around 70 years ago during World War I. And the best-known recording of it was a hit by Sophie Tucker, a lady known as the last of the Red Hot Mamas. We have a copy of Sophie's hit, a scratchy old 78 recorded about 70 years ago, and we're going to play a piece of it at the end of David Lee Roth's record, because I Ain't Got Nobody is the second of the two songs in the medley. At number 25 this week, here is David Lee Roth. It peaked at number 12, and it's number 25 this week. David Lee Roth's two-song medley of Just a Gigolo and I Ain't Got Nobody. Now, here's a piece of somebody else's much older recording of I Ain't Got Nobody.
I ain't got nobody, and nobody cares about me.
Now, that scratchy old record was made 67 years ago by the last of the Red Hot Mamas, the great Sophie Tucker. A lot of people have recorded it since then, including Bing Crosby and, of course, Louis Prima. And David Lee Roth is the latest to hit the charts with it, I Ain't Got Nobody. And the countdown continues on American Top 40.
Number 24. American Top 40.
Well, now, the story behind the rock-climbing rock star seen scaling a mountain covered with beautiful women on top of a record store. Why? Well, obviously not just because it's there. It was a publicity stunt staged by who else but David Lee Roth. David's an adventurous type, travels all over the world on safaris, mountain climbing expeditions, and so on. In fact, on the cover of Dave's new album, Skyscraper, there's a picture of him scaling a mountain in Yosemite. So, with mountains on his mind, Dave got creative. What would stop traffic in Hollywood? Well, how about a living, breathing billboard on the Sunset Strip, molded in the shape of a mountain? Now, the Strip is known for unusual showbiz billboards, but this one, it was the ultimate. It was unveiled a week and a half ago at the famous Tower Records store on Sunset. Spotlights filled the sky. 25,000 balloons were released into the air as David Lee Roth himself scaled the fabricated three-dimensional mini-mountain. And populating the peak were real, live, beautiful models decked out in alpine gear, mountain climbing harnesses, ropes, hard hat, helmets, and spandex and leather, of course. We're talking David Lee Roth, after all. Those curvy climbers were stationed on the mountainous billboard 24 hours a day in shifts through the entire weekend, waving to Sunset Strip car cruisers and other passers-by. If you can't go to the mountain, David Lee Roth brings the mountain to you, at least if you're in Hollywood. Diamond Dave's first hit from his album Skyscraper is Scaling the Survey, climbing a few thousand feet to number 37. He debuts with Just Like Paradise, David Lee Roth.
Just like Paris must be just like living in paradise.
David Lee Roth in Top 40 Paradise for the fourth time in his solo career. He debuts this week at number 37 with Just Like Paradise.
American Top 40.
We're coming to you from Hollywood. And here's a guy who's helped bring old-style Hollywood flash to the world of rock and roll. As David Lee Roth says, quote, extreme rock is our business. And for Dave, so is extreme altitude. On the cover of his new album, Skyscraper, and in the video for his current hit, he can be seen mountain climbing, scaling the face of the mountain called Half Dome in California's Yosemite National Park. He told Time magazine, rock climbing is a perfect metaphor for show business. It's a vertical world, either straight up or straight down. Moving up in the countdown, 5 notches to number 18. Here is David Lee Roth and Just Like Paradise.
Paradise.
Just Like Paradise. It moves from 23 to 18, the fourth top 40 solo hit for the mountain climbing man, David Lee Roth, as the countdown rocks on.
The hits from coast to coast.